What up, Neos? It's Yusuf here for another video game plot summary. This time we're going to finish the Prince of Persia saga with the Prince of Persia 3, The Two Thrones. Frankly, it's about time I finished one. If you want to help the channel grow, please like and subscribe. Also, leaving a comment would be nice. I like to read your comments and I like to respond to them. It's really hard to hurt my feelings if you want to talk smack, so go ahead. I don't want to spend a ton of time recapping two games, but everybody involved in this game is from the other two. So here's a card that will lead you to the playlist at least. The down and dirty of it is that the prince found this dagger and stuck it in an hourglass full of sand that killed his father when the sand got released. He didn't like that, so he used the dagger and the sands to turn time all the way back to the beginning of the game. Along the way, he met a princess named Farah and developed a relationship with her, but obviously, when he turned back time, Farah didn't know who he was. In the second one, the prince was being chased by a time monster called the Dahaka because he was supposed to die and he didn't. So he went back in time to a secluded island and met up with the Time Empress, Kaileena, who made the sands in the first place to stop them from being made. He defeated the Dahaka and saved the Empress, but when he brought her home to Persia with him, Persia was on fire. And that pretty much catches us up, so let's get cracking, shall we?
We all make mistakes. Some are small, some are large. But his mistake, born of innocence, fueled by pride, was the greatest and most terrible of them all.
All that is yours is rightfully mine. Change your fate.
Some believed when the prince journeyed to the island of time to escape death that he returned alone. The amulet destroyed, the Dahaka appeased, the Empress dead. The prince was free at last. But this is not how it happened. The truth is that he chose to save me from my destiny. In doing so, he set me free. And doomed us all. Prince, of all the possible futures, this one held the most promise that something has changed.
Do not worry, Kaileena. No harm will come to you in Babylon. I promise. Look, we are nearly home. No.
As our ship lay sinking in the harbor, the prince found himself in a city quite different from the one he left behind. The normally busy wharves were now decimated. Blood-spattered awnings and splintered door frames were all that waited to greet him. And the people, merchants, beggars, fishermen, were nowhere to be found. Others had taken their place.
Let her go!
Man, the prince had those words shoved back down his throat, didn't he? Well, Persia has gone to crap, and now the prince's new girlfriend is kidnapped, so we gotta go chase her.
Why is it that every time disaster strikes, I find myself without a proper blade? Still, it's better than nothing.
The prince vaguely follows Kaileena and the kidnappers, but it just seems serendipitous that he happens to be on the same path, but just out of reach. While he is making his way, an unknown person is telling a story to another unknown person, which could have definitely been done in a cutscene.
Strange tales upon its walls which spoke of an empire.
This dude says he traveled with the Maharaja to an island that was supposed to house the Empress of Time. But he did not find the Empress of Time. The Maharaja did, however, find the Dagger of Time, a staff, an empty hourglass, and a bunch of books that explain how to manipulate time itself. But the dude was getting super old, and without the Sands of Time, he wasn't going to be able to do anything to prolong his life. After a while, the dagger started talking to him, telling him to go to Persia. So this dude went to the Maharaja and tried to convince him to bring his army to Persia, but the Maharaja said no. So the guy got pissed and killed the Maharaja, took his throne, and brought the army to Persia himself, and that's why Babylon is on fire right now. And after hearing the story, the prince finally catches up to Kaileena.
This is how it happened. This is how I died.
No!
What have we here?
The Vizier!
Ah, you must be the Prince of Persia. Come home at last. Too late, I'm afraid. I believe I have something of yours.
No! Kaileena!
A promise of power fulfilled! I will be immortal!
Father, forgive what I have done, wherever you are.
Number 1, the Vizier doesn't know the prince because in the first episode, the prince rewound time to before they met. Also, in the second episode, he went to ask him about the Dahaka, but the prince went back in time, saved Kaileena, then brought her to the present, so none of that stuff happened either. And 2, that sharp chain-linked whip wrapped around the prince's left arm is just a part of him now. The razors clip through his body in almost every cutscene, no pun intended. I keep expecting him to address it, but he never does. It's one of those edgelord zeitgeist things, I guess. So, after that, the castle defense is active, and now the prince gets to use his dagger of time to manipulate all the traps. One of the things that bothers me about video games in general is that the devs know when they're a little light on the story. So they could either add more plot so that it's a little bit more interesting, or just keep throwing the gameplay at you and periodically reminding you of what you're supposed to be doing. A game like God of War has way too much going on, so you lose sight of the original plan. But this game has the opposite. It has so little going on that voices just show up and start talking. It has so little going on that voices play periodically to remind you of the one thing you're supposed to be doing.
Recklessly, the prince drew his weapon and charged forward, intending to rescue me. It was as if he had learned nothing from his past adventures. Or perhaps he'd simply forgotten, made blind and deaf by fear and rage.
It's pretty irritating for me because as I am moving through the footage, the same thing is being said to me over and over again. But at least the plot is easy to follow. I hope.
My arm! What's happening? What has the Vizier done to me? I don't... Oh!
Everything had come full circle. The prince had resurrected his greatest enemy. Worse, he had accidentally delivered me into the man's hands, unleashing a nightmare plague across Babylon. As if this was not enough, the prince had nearly been transformed by the sands himself. Though he had avoided death, he had not escaped entirely untouched.
Wake up, Prince. Wake up. Wake up.
That was weird. The prince fell down a hole and his shirt came off. Oh, and also there is a voice inside the prince's head talking to him, and now his arm is glowing. Given the scope of this game, that is kind of normal, but the shirt coming off thing, that's awkward. Like, I would be asking about that right away when I got up. Like, why is it so cold here? What happened to my shirt? Hey, voice in my head. Why are you taking my clothes away? So the prince moves through what looks to be the basement of a palace until the situation gets more weird. Now the prince has a second form. He's basically the Wraith from the last game, except without a mask or a second version of him in the timeline. Also, the chain that's stuck on his arm is now a full-fledged weapon that he can use. Sure. This form kinda sucks because even though it's stronger and it helps him to get to platforms he normally couldn't reach, he can't switch in and out of it like Spider-Man in Web of Shadows switches from the symbiote to regular Spider-Man. There are just sections where he's the Shadow Prince, and you just make do with that. Also, like the Wraith form in the second one, the Prince is continuously losing energy and has to kill monsters and break pottery to find more sands to refuel him. That puts a timer on everything you do and kills the replay mechanic of the dagger. I mean, you can still use the dagger to rewind time, but it also takes away from the sand that is required for you to live. So, if you're platforming and you had to rewind more than once, then you're as good as dead. It adds some stakes to the gameplay and changes it up, but at the same time it doesn't really make it more interesting. Again, if they gave the prince a choice to switch back and forth between the two forms, then they would have had more options. But I'm sure that system constraints in the PlayStation 2 and Xbox presented a bit of an obstacle. And sorry, that was a lot of explanation. Let's move along. So, eventually the prince asks the voice in his head what the hell is up with him turning into a shadow.
Why then is this happening to me?
You have been infected by the sands of time, as I am sure you have noticed. Maybe it's the dagger. Maybe it's all the time you spend amongst the sands. Or amongst the Empress. Either way, you are resisting it. Mostly.
Mostly?
You did just transform into something rather unique, so I think the word is quite appropriate. Think of it this way. You have been given a gift. You're stronger, faster.
Uglier.
Now.
That explains the transformation. But who are you?
Have you not realized? I am your untapped potential, your unrealized dreams. I am part of you.
Inside me?
With that explanation, the prince keeps going until he hits a pool of water. The prince finally makes his way out of the Babylonian underground and gets to a tower where he can see what he's dealing with.
Babylon. It's so far away. As a child, Father would tell me stories
Pay
of...
attention. Something is happening down there.
It's the Vizier! He's been completely transformed.
Interesting. He has used the power of the sands to transform his army. And these artifacts will allow him to transport them across the city with ease. He appears to be in complete control. Things do not look too good for you at the moment.
I will not let the Vizier have Babylon. My city. My throne!
Are you serious? So you mean to tell me that the Vizier used the sands to transform himself into a butterfly? That's not quite the most regal transformation that this dude could have done. So now the prince has a new mission to destroy these sand gates. Every time he does, he gets a new sand power, which means that the game gatekeeps the powers you can get. And some of these powers are pretty much useless. Sometimes you get powers that help you manipulate time, but then sometimes you get sand credits. And I still don't know what those are. The game doesn't do a very good job of explaining it to you. Maybe you use sand credits to unlock things in a gallery, because I didn't run into anybody the whole game that could help me make my powers any better. But it is a buzzkill to close a sand gate and get credits. So the prince fights the guys, closes the sand gate, runs along, and then turns into the Shadow Prince. And he steps into water later and turns back into a normal prince just as he leaves the castle gates. I think you get the loop.
Are you sure you can control this thing?
Let us hope! If I crash, it is the end for both of us!
The prince! Stop him!
And so once more the prince began the journey home, his mind afire with visions of the justice he would visit upon the Vizier.
Nice.
We made it!
Hold your horses!
Come on!
After running through Babylon for a long time, the prince ends up in a Coliseum and finds a new challenger.
This thing was once a man. He was there when Kaileena died.
Alright, so this is an interesting fight. Now, number one, I don't understand why the barbarian guy doesn't have a jaw or why he is super huge. Those things aren't really answered that much. But you have to avoid his sword because he could pretty much kill you almost instantly with it. You gotta run around on the sides of the Coliseum till you get to a higher plane, and then you jump off the higher plane to a QTE where the prince jumps around this barbarian guy and stabs his eyes until he can't see anymore. Then, when he can't see anymore, you run around to the back and start cutting up his legs until he falls down on his knees. And then, of course, you do one more QTE, and the prince jumps all over him like a squirrel with a knife. And that's about all there is to that. No more Mr. Sword Guy.
Keep away from me!
After disposing of the monster, the prince moves to Babylon to find the next gate and gets taken by surprise. Water. Man, that was... oof. Those sections are a little rough for me.
Well, look at that.
Farah!
How do you know my name?
Yes,
I eagerly await your response.
I have heard tales, wondrous tales of a beautiful and brave princess of India. One who has traveled to Babylon seeking to punish an evil vizier who has caused her great distress.
See? Now she's going to kill us.
How in the world have you managed to survive this long? Good luck, stranger.
Apparently, Indians don't have British accents too. After closing the next gate and gaining the power to slow down time, he runs into Farah again.
The Dagger of Time. How did you come to possess that?
Here we go again.
I took it from the vizier.
That traitor. He murdered my father, enslaved my people, imprisoned me. And all in the name of becoming some kind of god.
I know too well what he is capable of. But I intend to find him and punish him for what he has done to my kingdom.
You are the son of Shahraman? The Prince of Persia?
And you are the daughter of the Maharaja. We both seek the same thing. Perhaps we should journey together.
Perhaps. Provided you can keep up.
I grow tired of her little tests.
It is simply her way. I assure you, she will prove a valuable ally.
Okay, and we will stop it there. I don't want to get too far into the Farah-Prince relationship thing before we move to the next episode. So, well, not much to say here. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out, like, super, especially a teeny tiny channel like mine. And yeah, we'll see you on the next one. You guys freed me like Neo freed Agent Smith. Peace.